Everybody to Alpha Sigma News last lecture. Thank you all so much for coming. We're really excited to be here tonight. First of all, a couple of housekeeping items. For those of you that are Alpha Sigma News members, please sign in up there before you leave tonight. And also, if any of you have any professors that you'd like to hear from in this last lecture series, please go ahead and there's a form up there where you can make your suggestions. So with that said, I would like to introduce Dr. Kent Hoffman. He is a psychology professor, an adjunct psychology professor here at Gonzaga. He is also a clinical psychologist. And we are all very excited to hear his insights and his wisdom, as many of us are not fortunate enough to have him in class. So we would like to put our hands together, put a big Gonzaga welcome to Dr. Kent Hoffman.
Well, thank you, Bart. I appreciate immensely being invited to be here. This is the title, by the way, for the evening's talk. It's a little different probably than what was originally up there. Human Suffering, Original Tenderness, and the Sacred in 60 minutes or less. So my goal, can you hear this on? No, it's because I didn't turn it on. I have some colleagues that I work with that call me a techno-dunce because I just, for some reason, don't remember to turn things on. My goal is to sort of cover the whole of human suffering in 60 minutes, and then you get to go out and, do whatever you do after you leave here. But I'm serious. I really do want to talk to you about the last 40 years of my life and how I've come to understand why it is that we suffer. And my assumption is that we all suffer. It's an incredible privilege to be here, to have been asked. It's just, I felt so honored to be asked to give this last lecture. It's a little daunting because that means I'm dying sometime tonight. But at least I get to say what I want to say, and it's going to be filmed, and they just told me it'll be on YouTube, so I mean, I'm good to go, I think. So that's kind of a neat thing. So here's some bad news for me. We tend to forget about 95% of what we hear in lectures in about 48 hours. So you may wonder why I'm doing this. Well, it's on YouTube. So what I want to tell you is that there are going to be about 120 slides. I worked on this last week, last couple of days, woke up this morning, worked on it, and then after work today, redid it all. So I have no idea what it'll actually look like. But there are probably 120 slides, and all you really need to remember are 4. Okay? There will be 2 images and 2 quotations. The rest is commentary. The rest isn't even necessary for you to remember. If you remember these 2 quotations and these 2 images, I think I'd be really comfortable with what happened. So, the first image is from a photographer in Brisbane, Australia. Somebody sent it to me a couple of months ago, and I have found it to be absolutely stunning. And I have a copy for everybody who is here, so when you leave tonight, everybody gets a copy. So just take a moment and look at that image. And again, we've only got 60 minutes here, but maybe 1 or 2 of you would tell me what you think or feel when you look at that image. Warmth. Warmth, yeah. Somebody had their hand up there? Well, you'd better have your hand up. Nobody? Okay. Anybody else? Warmth? Pardon? Repel? What's repulsive?
It just seems like it's like everyone's trying to invoke It's like very cliche. It's too
Ah,
cliche.
so it's cliche. It may well be cliched. What in fact happened is this man that's the photographer was sitting talking to this father and his son in a park. And he just took his camera and he just took the picture. And there it sat. And it's the fact that it was not posed, but actually just simply present, that I'm most interested in. Anybody else?
Comfort,
Comfort? Okay.
nurturing,
Nurture? Okay. Right. Okay.
tenderness.
Pardon?
Tenderness.
Tenderness, yeah. This is the second image. So these are two of the four things I'm going to ask you to remember by the end of the meeting. And again, there will be a copy of this for you as well. So what I'd like to talk about initially is the human condition. And in both Buddhism and Hinduism, they talk about samsara, which really means the endless wheel of life and death, or the endless wheel of suffering. Specifically, what I want you to think about is Buddha's first noble truth. And part of the power, I think, of this particular quotation, because it is one of the four noble truths that the Buddha came up with, is that we all suffer. And it's not something we're here to blame ourselves about. Part of the issue is that we think we're not supposed to suffer. And in fact, it seems to be absolutely part and parcel of being a human being. In fact, one of my first teachers in Buddhism, a man by the name of Robert Aiken, reframed it as anguish is everywhere. So I've been a professional for the last 40 years. I've worked in prisons. I've worked a lot with homeless adults. I've worked with the terminally ill. I've worked with university students. I've worked with street-dependent youth. And I've worked with just normal crazy people, right? Which would be basically all of us. Right? And that's really my contention at some level. When we talk about life as suffering, we're saying that we all suffer to some degree, and that we're all somehow normal and we're all somehow crazy. So regardless of who I meet, I find a certain fundamental disease in the life of pretty much everybody I run into on this planet. And here are the kind of themes I continue to run into. People who feel stuck in insecurity that they can't seem to make sense of, feeling alone in emotional patterns that we can't seem to alter, feeling anxious and or angry and or confused with no clear sense of why, or always having a new target, and running as fast as we can and actually not getting anywhere. These are the themes I consistently run into with people. But more than that, whether I'm working with somebody in my office and they come in for an initial appointment, or if I'm talking actually to somebody I know who's a friend who's struggling, or if I'm working with one of the street-dependent, students or young kids that I work with at Crosswalk in downtown Spokane, these are the three questions I continue to run into with everybody I meet. And by the way, I just want to clarify this, all the answers are on Google. So my job is, I'm just getting out in time because any of you who are studying psychology, there won't be any jobs for Google. Actually, I just read something last night. This will really be scary for all of you who are psych majors. The #1 least employable job in America is clinical psychology. So just saying. So, question #1, why so often do I feel alone? At some level, I'd say everybody who I talk to, if I really get below the surface, is in some way asking this question. Question #2, does anyone care for who I really am? Does anybody care for who I really am? And question #3, back to question #2. we're waiting to meet somebody who, a very common term I'll hear when people come in for therapy is they're waiting to find somebody who gets it. Somebody who can hear what they're actually saying. So there's the experience of someone who wants to listen, the experience of someone who cares without being overwhelmed, and someone who can comprehend without taking over or giving advice or answers. These are the common themes when we run into pain, and I really want to zero in on this as we talk through the evening. This is up at Lake Ponderay. We're in trouble if you don't know I'm joking, but this is the third question. What do I do with my pain? Sometimes I'm afraid I'll just keep falling forever. But this question I want to come back to again and again tonight in less than an hour is what do I do with my pain? Because in some ways I think that's at the core of human suffering. So I do a 3x5 card exercise. I work at Crosswalk, which is a homeless shelter here in town with high-risk moms and dads, mostly moms, and their infants and young children. And every year when I start my groups, I give them a 3x5 card, and on that 3x5 card I ask them to write a statement about what it is that they hear in their head throughout the day that they wish they didn't hear. Some voice they hear in their head. And I say I'm going to have you write it on a 3x5 card, hand it in, and I'm going to read it out loud. So if you don't want to do this, just write, I don't want to do this. So you have complete permission not to do it. But if you're willing to do it, I'm going to read it out loud in a few minutes. I'm going to shuffle them up, they'll put your name on it. I don't want people figuring out who wrote what they did, but I want you to feel free to say whatever it is that goes on in your head. So a couple of years ago, when I was doing this, I asked if they were willing to have it read publicly, would they be willing to put an X on the lower right-hand corner? So everything I'm reading has been given permission to be read publicly. And I also want to say that I didn't pick these for the most intense. These are very typical each year when I start my groups at Crosswalk. And we talk about the voice in their head, and here's a very, very, very common comments that I'll get. You are damaged and not worth what undamaged people are worthy of. You're dirty, no one could ever love you. You don't count, you're only good for sex. You are a failure, you always let everybody down. You will never be loved. You're not good enough, no matter how hard you try. You can't do anything right. Now, these are street-dependent, homeless parents who are now living at the shelter. But they have a history of abuse and neglect, and these kinds of messages make some sense, given what their history is. Does that seem accurate? Okay. Now, apparently, I also teach at Gonzaga University. And each year, at the beginning of the class, I also give out these 3x5 cards. I give the same drill in terms of this is the kind of, you guys are getting really nervous, am I going to read your quotes? These are from several years ago. Several students in this year's class are saying, you're not going to read mine, are you? And so, again, I give the same description of what the plan, and they write out these quotes, and I say, you don't have to if you don't want to. And so, again, they've given permission for these to be read publicly. So these are from probably 4 years ago, so you don't know these students. And they are, I think they're probably 4 years ago. Again, the voice. You're not good enough for anyone. People who say you aren't telling the truth. Nobody really cares about you. The ones that tried to care, you've pushed away. You are not worthy to be loved. You will never be loved. You will always be alone. You're not good enough for anybody. No one could ever truly love you. Now, the question I always ask is, do you see much difference between these homeless street parents and the students that are seniors at Gonzaga University? Do these quotes sound pretty similar to you? So, what I really wanted to call the talk was fuck normalcy. Because I think normalcy really, really, really gets in the way. And that's a lot of what I want to say is at the crux of our pain. Because the world of normalcy gets us in lots of trouble in ways we don't even know because it's just so normal. I think most of us in this room, you may be one of the 6 people on the planet that doesn't feel any of these things, but the rest of us know exactly what I'm talking about. These everyday experiences of insecurity, feeling empty or feeling depressed, feeling anxious, feeling confused, unable to trust others or the future, and lots of negative self-talk. Over 70% of our self-talk is negative. That's interesting. I mean, how many of you got up this morning and looked in the mirror and said, "Hello, beautiful"? Right? That doesn't tend to be what we do. Right? Think of what you do say in the mirror when you look. So the world of normalcy looks a lot like this. And it's, excuse my French, but it's, I guess since I've said the other word, I can say this one. Basically, the world of normalcy is the world of icing over shit. We're just not allowed to name our pain. We're just not allowed to even know we've got it. We're supposed to be doing something else, but certainly not what we're actually feeling. And sadly, many of us don't even know what we're feeling. We may be in pain and not have a clue we're in pain. And this is the icing that's very typically, we don't have to feel the pain if we keep, not feeling the pain. How many of you know Post Secret, the website? It's a website where you send in a postcard to this address in New Jersey or something, and you just tell the secret you were not going to tell anybody else. They came out, it's been online for I think 7 years, and I don't know how many millions they've gotten. But in the last 2 months they've had an app and they've gotten over 800,000 Post Secrets in 2 months. People want to tell their secrets. Right? These are typical secrets on Post Secret. Sometimes I pretend to be cold just so that you'll hold me. Sometimes I'm only Christian so I can go to heaven to meet my mom. This is the girl I'm still in love with, but I can't figure out why. I'm in love with love, but too scared to fall in love again. I have told my family I'm an atheist because I still want to get Christmas presents. I haven't told my family I'm an atheist. I'm afraid that if you stop doing drugs, you'll realize that you're insane to be with me. I have much more personality on Facebook than I do in person. I cheated on you, the boy I want to marry, with someone I don't see a future with. Because I've never been with a guy who didn't hit me, stalk me, compromise me, or continuously put me down. The constant happiness made me anxious. Now I realize my issues hurt you just like they hurt me. I'm afraid I'll end up alone, but I'm also afraid to take the risk. I'm 53 and I still wish for someone who could make it all better. So my contention this evening is that there's just so much hidden pain in this world. So much that we can't name, so much that's under the surface, so much that we don't tell other people, so much we don't tell ourselves. And that has everything to do with samsara. That has everything to do with human suffering. So you wake up in the morning, start, and you're supposed to get to finish. How's your day going to go? And basically, this is what it feels like, I think, for a lot of people when they wake up in the morning. You don't have to be clinically depressed to feel this way. And basically, I think the mantra of our culture sounds like this. And who could blame us, right? Why wouldn't we be walking around wondering what's going on? So again, the talk tonight is Human Suffering, Original Tenderness, and the Sacred. And we've just been talking about human suffering, but guess what? We're going to talk about it some more. And I want to talk about how we can understand it. Let this be an image of pain, like a tornado in the midst of a black hole. And the issue is, what's the common denominator of human pain in the black hole? Well, we've looked at this once. In another post-secret, I just want to tell someone how angry I am. Or I just want to tell someone how sad I am. Or I just want to tell someone how afraid I am. Or I just want to tell someone how lost I am. But gosh, I don't get to do that. Because I'm supposed to go down to the Bulldog and drink tonight. And I'm supposed to act like I'm really, really happy. And there's a game tomorrow night, and I'm supposed to be in the kennel club and jumping up and down and drunk out of my brain. And I don't get to talk about my anger, or my sadness, or my fear, or my shame. Because I'm supposed to be really, really happy. So here's the definition I'd like to give of suffering. Suffering is pain that we experience all alone. It's not just pain, it's the experience of pain and being all alone. So I'm an attachment theorist, and that's pretty much what I teach here at Gonzaga. And I'm going to give you attachment theory in 3 minutes. You guys don't have to take the test. So here it is in 1 minute. Sound familiar? Now there's this great Sufi saying that goes like this. You think that because you understand one, you will also comprehend two, because one and one make two. But to truly understand two, you must first comprehend. Anybody who knows the answer will say it. To understand one and one make two, what do you have to understand? What do you have to first comprehend?
Zero.
Zero. Wow, wow. No, never. That's not the answer.
The and.
Bingo. And. See, we always focus on the one or we focus on the other one, but we don't necessarily notice the and in between, which could look a lot like zero if we don't know it's an and. And that's probably the issue. We see a zero when in fact it's an and. Whoa, this is getting heavy. So we're hardwired for and. Attachment theory in 3 minutes. We're hardwired for and. We're not hardwired for, getting rich. We're not hardwired for, lots and lots of sex. We're hardwired for and. And unless and is a part of the sex, it's not really going to meet our hardwire. I mean, I guess we are hardwired for lots and lots of sex, but but the and is a deeper issue at some level. Donald Winnicott, an object relations theorist who is a precursor to our understanding of attachment, said that what we're really hardwired for is a holding environment. It's a lovely term. It's way too intellectual to use much, but I love the term holding, and I really love the term holding environment. We're hardwired to experience a holding environment. Another word that's coming up now in a lot of brain research is we're hardwired for an experience of resonance. We're hardwired to know that somebody's in the same wavelength that we're in. And it isn't a matter of words, it's a matter of feeling tone and a matter of presence. And you could have somebody saying a lot of words and saying they understand you, and you know they don't, because there's no resonance. That's what resonance is. Mary Ainsworth, the founder of attachment research, John Bowlby was the founder of the theory, but she was the founder of the research, says we're concerned with nothing less than the nature of love. When we're studying attachment, we're concerned with nothing less than the nature of love. So developmental psychology, as I understand it, is for human beings, security is always relational. If I'm going to feel secure on this planet, I need to be in a healthy relationship. It doesn't happen any other way. I don't know anybody I've ever met who was secure who isn't in some level of healthy relationship. So you could have endless learning. You could have 6 PhDs, right? You could have endless money. You could be Donald Trump. You know, you could have endless acquisition. You could be Rupert Murdoch. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who's sort of the founder of the death and dying movement, which is not a movement you'd want to be noted for, said, I've never met a person on their deathbed who said, damn, I wish I'd spent more time at the office. What do people talk about on the deathbed? What are they doing as they're dying? They're recounting their relationships. They're feeling either grateful for what they have or remorse for what they didn't. But it's about relationships. So when I experience and this is attachment theory in an awfully simplistic way, when I experience and, I'm secure. And when I don't experience and, or to the degree that I can't experience and, I'm insecure. When I experience holding, I'm secure, and when I can't find holding, or have it within myself, I'm insecure. So one way to kind of summarize everything we've just been talking about for the last 25 minutes is love is always center stage in everyone's life. You don't know it necessarily because you're too busy either getting an education or acquiring or thinking something else is essential. But to some degree, we're either experiencing fulfillment because it's actually present or we're suffering because we can't find it. Go home and watch any movie that has 2 people in it, and this is the equation in the film. Go home and watch CSI. Go home and watch House. Go home and watch any TV show. It's going to be about either the fulfillment of a relationship or the weird things we do when we don't have access. So understanding suffering basically is that pain is inevitable. Pain happens. And when it's held, pain can be workable. We can work with it. But without, and when it's held, and when we have an experience of it being held, we learn or trust it. We don't have time tonight to go into the actual studies of attachment theory, but attachment theory is about the study of babies, infants and babies, who experience in micro moments and micro internalizations through the first year, 2, and 3 years of life, and come out, and certainly by the time they're a year, we can really know and study whether or not a child's secure, based on their experience of being held and their experience of being able to trust in that moment. Now that's awfully simplistic, and I don't have time to go into it tonight, but there's an incredible science behind what I'm saying. Molly Kretschmar Hendricks is back here, and she's an attachment researcher and noted throughout the country about her understanding of attachment. If you haven't taken her course, and there's any way, I guess it's not so, you can't go there. She'll teach a course for a day someday on attachment theory. It'll be great fun. So the definition I want to sort of, it's the flip side of the coin, is that pain without holding becomes suffering. So again, suffering is pain experienced all alone. It's not pain. Suffering is not about pain. It's pain without holding. It's pain without relationship. Pain with relationship isn't suffering. Pain without relationship is suffering. So, 2 pictures, 2 quotes. Here's the first quote. Underneath all of his or her preoccupations with sex, society, religion, etc., all the staple abstractions which allow the forebrain to chatter, there is quite simply a person tortured beyond endurance by the lack of tenderness in the world. Lawrence Durrell. So where we're going in the last half hour here is how to get access to this tenderness. And we've been talking now about the importance of it and what happens when we don't have it. So the sidebar here is the reasons for this lack of tenderness are many, and the key isn't that we find the missing. The key isn't that we, see, I did this just an hour and a half ago. Please disregard what you're reading. It should be saying the key isn't that we find the missing tenderness, is that, never mind. just pretend I went right by that slide. Right onto this slide. I feel like Rick Perry last night. Anyway, we're going to need a bigger book. When we're in pain and when we're feeling alone, we're going to need a bigger book. So, now we're going to talk about the sacred. I intentionally threw the word prayer and implied that we'd be talking about that tonight because I didn't want to come out of left field for people. People might have come and been interested in this, talk about human suffering and attachment theory, and then feel like, what? Why did he go to prayer? Right? But I want to make it very clear, there's no way I'd be standing here without prayer. There's no way I'd be standing here without a spiritual practice. And at this point in my life, I love teaching attachment theory. It's just one of the great joys of my life. But really what I want to do when I grow up is talk about prayer. And I want to do it in a way I hope can be palatable for people so that it doesn't feel like one more thing getting shoved down their throat. So let's see if I can pull that off. This is it's called the 9-dot trick. About 1/4 of the population knows it. What you're supposed to do is connect the 9 dots on a piece of paper with 4 straight lines, but once you begin, you can't take your pen off the paper. How many of you know how to do this? Not even, okay, 6 or 8. Okay, so that's about a full. So, just in your mind, connect the 9 dots, 4 straight lines, but once you start, you can't take your finger off what you're doing. So anybody who doesn't know how to do it, or didn't when we started, feel like you can do it? You can make a lot of money in a bar on this. Because in fact, nobody knows how to do it unless somebody's shown them. And it's really, really surprising to me how this happens, but in fact, it seems to be built into the human condition somehow. Because this is what people will typically do. There's a variety of ways you'll do it, but here's 1, 2, 3, 4. But you'll notice you missed a dot. You may have done it in a different configuration, but you still missed a dot. So the way it's done is this way. This is one of several. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's like no duh, right? But in a way, nobody told you you had to stay within the dots. But you stayed within the dots. Now, what's so interesting is, you know this phrase, right? We use it all the time. Think outside the box. This is where it comes from. We've been using that phrase your whole life, and it comes from this 9-dot trick, and most people have no idea what the phrase comes from. But the fact is, there's this self-imposed limitation that we stay within those 9 dots, and nobody told us we had. So, when I'm talking about spiritual practice and human suffering, which I think absolutely are connected, spiritual practice I'm going to define as finding holding that is larger than our pain. The way it's understood in psychology with that 9-dot trick is that the answer to any given problem can only be found by getting larger than the level upon which it was originally created. The answer to a problem can only be found by getting larger than the level upon which it was originally created. So spiritual practice is about finding holding that is larger than the level upon which we're experiencing the pain. And what does that mean? That means when we're in pain, when we're in samsara, when we're in this perpetual experience of suffering that we don't know how to get out of, we stay stuck inside the box. Right? But is it possible there's holding larger than the box? Every spiritual tradition I've ever studied, and world religions is my major in college, every spiritual tradition I know talks about this larger context than the text upon which the problem currently exists. So remember this question? What do we do with my pain? By and large, people who suffer, which means all of us, don't know what to do with our pain. We're stuck not knowing what to do with our pain. So we tend to do what we've always done, and mostly in this culture of normalcy, we hide it. We hide it from others, we hide it from ourselves. So here's some research. By and large, if you want to shift in the direction of security, there are these different ways that are now being recognized as ways that open us into security. In the literature, it's called earn secure. One is a secure partner or a friend. Helps if you have them for a long time, like a life partner. Another is to find a secure community. This is part of why AA works and NA works, is that you're in a community of people who struggle, but there's a security together that you don't have alone. Some churches are secure, I think some are not secure. So you have to be careful when you talk about community. Finding a secure therapist, somebody who's more secure than you are, and that can track where you're insecure and hold steady, and we'll talk a little bit about what holding steady looks like. And now there's some wonderful research coming out of UC Davis that talks about a secure spiritual practice does seem to be not only changing the brain, but the body, and offering us a deeper sense of security than people thought was possible. So if you feel like you're insecure and lost, if you feel like you're in pain and you're looking for a holding environment, finding a secure friend or partner, finding a secure community, finding a secure therapist, any one of these, by the way, or a secure spiritual practice. So what I want to talk about right now is the spiritual practice. So what do these have in common? One, they support the truth of our pain. We don't have to lie anymore. I'm not going to ask if anybody's been to an AA meeting because that would sort of call you out. But if you go to an AA meeting, what you do is you talk about your pain. You don't hide your pain, you tell your pain. Right? But sadly, if you go to church, you probably hide your pain. You may say it quietly to yourself, but it's not like you turn to your person in the pew and talk to them about it. We hide our pain in a culture that says hide it, when in fact, to get secure, you need to be able to tell the truth of your pain. And secondly, the one who we are talking to is able to stay steady in the midst of your telling the truth. These two common denominators seem to be central in terms of building security. One is you can tell your truth, and secondly, when you tell it, the other doesn't fall apart. They can stay there and be steady in the midst of it. When you have these two ingredients, you're in pretty good shape. But that's what I mean by a secure partner, or a secure community, or a secure therapist, or a secure spiritual practice. Because sadly, what we run into is icing over the chaos. So that, unfortunately, one of the most painful practices in our culture is when somebody describes that they're in pain, or somebody, I mean, for example, you may have somebody very close to you die. And if you let people around you know, I can pretty much guarantee you a very high percentage of those people will say things like, everything happens for a reason. And I'm not saying it doesn't, but that's icing, right? Or he's in a better place now. That's icing. We're doing that to protect ourselves. We're saying those things to keep away from the pain we're feeling, when in fact what we need is somebody to just be quiet and let us feel our pain. But we don't do that in this culture very much, which allows us to suffer all the more. So here's the second quotation. I use centering as a verb to mean a continual process of uniting opposites. Centering for me is the discipline of saying yes to what is most holy, as well as what is unbearable. The severity of that as a discipline is not widely understood. I don't think a spiritual practice, which I'm talking about here in the last 15 minutes, is about putting icing over shit. I think a spiritual practice is about taking the most unbearable and putting it up against the most holy. And what makes suffering suffering is we have the most unbearable, and I think many of us in this room know exactly what the most unbearable feels like. But we don't know where to bring it, and so we carry it ourselves and we suffer. But what would happen if we could bring it to a place that would hold it? The suffering would become pain, but pain will not undo us. Suffering might. So the unbearable, this pain in the black hole that's experienced all along. And one way to define it is pain we don't want to be here. Well, that's pretty much all pain. But it can be profoundly unbearable. Can somebody tell me what this is a picture of? Pardon?
Mount St. Helens.
Mount St. Helens. I wish it were. It's Hiroshima. So it looks a lot like Mount St. Helens. But this is Hiroshima. One of the most god-awful events in the history of humankind. And this is a Hibakusha, who are people who survived Hiroshima. And in the 1970s, a group of Hibakusha came to the United States, and here's a piece of calligraphy that they brought. So these are people who went through Hiroshima and Nagasaki, survived it, had their families destroyed, had their city destroyed. They came to the United States, which was the scene of the crime for them, right? And they handed this piece of calligraphy to somebody. And here's what the calligraphy says. May you know the peace that is, regardless of external conditions of happiness or suffering. Now, if you got that on a card, it'd sound like Hallmark and you throw it away, right? Because it would be like pablum. But this isn't pablum. This is from people who've been through some of the most horrendous suffering in the history of the world. And they're talking about a peace that exists underneath the external conditions of happiness or suffering. Regardless of whether you're happy or suffering, deeper than that, there is a peace. Now, what I want to close out this talk with is talking about how every spiritual tradition I know has this in common. An understanding that there is a reality deeper than happiness or suffering. So they call it peace. So here's the whole. In Buddhism, one way to define enlightenment is coming home to our original nature. In terms of the statement you just heard from that Japanese group of Hibakusha, they're saying, may you know your original nature. May you know the deepest part of you. So, to be enlightened in the Zen tradition is to come home to your original nature, to find your original nature rather than all the icing you spend your time doing. Come home to your original nature. That's what it means to wake up and be enlightened. In Christianity, we talk about salvation, and one way to define that is coming home to the nature of God. So I want to get real practical tonight when I'm talking about human suffering. I want to define what we most need in our deepest nature at some level as original tenderness. I, by the way, understand why this man said that this image looked cliche, because it can. I also want you to know that in 40 years of my study and understanding of attachment, that image so deeply defines what we most need. It's painful that it can look like a cliche because it in fact is what we most need. So we come back to this original image. When you see a parent and a child together, what you're really looking at is the way in which there's this dance of relationship. Okay? I'm going to show you like 1 minute of a mom and a baby. They're both really quite secure. And I just want you to take a quick look at this dance between the two of them, which I'm basically defining as original tenderness. Everything got kind of turned around here. Talk amongst yourselves for a second. So this is a split screen. And there's a camera on the mom and a camera on the baby. And I just want you to pay attention to the tenderness that they share. And the way in which this mom, what you're going to see is the child go into happy states and sad states. The issue is, can the mom join the child in both states? Secure parents can follow their child into sadness, but also follow them into happiness, then follow them into sadness and follow them into happiness. That's what we're looking for. And that's what makes for a secure child. So let's just take a look at this. So you saw her when the baby was happy, right? I'm all there with you, Mom, right? And the baby. Now the baby's sad. What's the mom doing? She's joining her there too. This is resonance, right? This is what we're wired to experience. When I'm sad, I want the person who's with me to feel that same sadness. I don't want them to get overwhelmed by it, but I want them to know what it is to be sad and not talk me out of it. That makes sense? I'll watch a little bit more of it, and then I want to show you a different clip.
You can put it in your mouth if you want to. You can show me your tongue. It's a nice tongue you have. It's a nice tongue you have. Nice tongue.
I just want to make it clear, that's what original tenderness looks like. Now I'll show you what happens when it doesn't go well. We hired an actress because we didn't want a poster child for the worst parent in the world. This is actually a real baby though. And this child is distressed. And watch, we asked the parent to do what parents in our culture typically do. Sadly, typically do. It's called overbright. And it's something they do when the child gets distressed.
Come on, show me a smile. Look at this. Show me a happy baby. Let me see a smile. Let me see a smile. Show me the happy baby. Come on. Come on, you can do it. Let me see that smile. Come on. Let me see it. Show me the happy baby. Come on, you can do it. Show me. He says, I want to see you smile. Give me a laugh. Come on. You can do it. Aww. Turn that frown upside down. Come on. Come on. Come on. You can do it.
So, would it make sense to you if that child got that 24/7? Would that child would say, I don't think anybody gets it. You know, I've got distress and I can't show it. I'm supposed to be happy. I'm supposed to be. Yeah. Is it the? What is it?
Maybe the speaker in jack on your computer with the speaker.
Could be.
There you go.
Yeah, good. Thank you. This stuff starts early. But we live in a culture that says be happy. Don't be real. And that has a lot to do with things. So original tenderness, in my experience as a clinician, and I've been a clinician now for 4 years, is that the central ingredient required and the central ingredient missing for all who continue to struggle within this world of samsara is we lack the sensitivity and resonance available within this original tenderness. We're still looking for it if we don't have it. And sadly, we think it may not be possible. To the degree that we have direct experience of original tenderness, we know trust and are secure in our lives and in the universe. To the degree that we don't have direct experience of original tenderness, we do not trust and are insecure in our lives and in the universe. So many of us in this room, in this city, on this planet are insecure. But only most of them. So I'm defining tonight sacred practice as the place where the unbearable is held by original tenderness, in whatever form we can claim it. And my experience is that at the heart of spiritual life, and I really mean this, as bizarre as it sounds to many in this room, even though this is a Catholic university, is that original tenderness is available in every moment. You do not have to find the perfect partner to find original tenderness. But it is very important to ask and to find a way to get access to original tenderness. So we'll take the last few minutes to talk about what that might be. Many people, when they hear this, say, well, that's just too good to be true. You know, it's bullshit. Stop it. Or it's too fantastical. It's just too wild. It's too magical. How can original tenderness be available in a world of such suffering, and in a world in which I've suffered for so long? Why would I in any way, shape, or form believe that original tenderness is available in every moment? Here's my conclusion from years of infant development research on my own. I think original tenderness is just too basic, too foundational, too built into the core of who we are to be considered either too good or miraculous. It's just so simple. In fact, Mary Ainsworth, the founder of attachment research, said, secure parents and children, like that little girl we saw with her mom. That is the simplest, easiest form of communication between parent and child. To be insecure, you have to get pretty complex. But we're so hardwired to be simple and present in that way. We're hardwired for resonance. We have to move our way out of resonance into insecurity. But in our culture, that's the norm. I don't know that there's a perfect culture out there. Some people say, you know, go to the Trobriand Islands or whatever, and then you'll find the perfect culture. I I have never seen one. But I do know in our culture, we are so busy making ourselves insecure with priorities that have nothing to do with relationship. I've been working for 20 plus years with high-risk teen moms. Right? They come from a history of abuse, neglect, they live below the poverty level. They are teenagers, they have a child, they may be 14 or 15 years old and have a 1-year-old. Right? I mean, they come with lots of baggage. One would not think they have much of a chance. So I've worked with these parents for a long time. In spite of often horrific abuse and neglect, they are hardwired to be competent, caring, and loving parents. That has been my experience time and time again. What we have found in our research and in our work with these parents is that if you give them half a chance to understand what's the problem, and they remove the problem, what's left over is their original tenderness. They are so deeply hardwired to love their children, they will love their children. They just have to get what's in the way out of the way. And often it's a history of abuse and neglect. And usually it shows up in this form. It shows up in what we call negative attribution to the child. They just see the child as a bad child. You get them to recognize the child's not a bad child, the child's just trying to communicate. They go, oh my God, my child needs me. The moment they wake up to that, their hardwiring kicks in, and that original tenderness, which was always there below the surface, comes through. So you have this experience of parent and child, and whether it's a middle-class parent who's had all the best options available, or whether it's a very high-risk parent, when you get the crap out of the way, what you've got left is what's been there all the way. That tells me something about our original nature. That tells me something about who we are. That tells me something about what's available in every moment. What happens in every insecure parent I've ever worked with is not that they aren't hardwired to offer original tenderness. What happens is they have a history that gets in the way, and it blocks the original tenderness. Psychotherapy for parents of infants and children, and I do believe this is the future of psychotherapy. I'm very excited about what will happen in the next 20 or 30 years in terms of interventions for parents and children. And I think we'll have more secure children in 20 or 30 years because of that. What happens is we just go in and figure out what's in the way. We get that out of the way, and what's left over is the relationship, is this original tenderness. So one way to describe this is that we've got more to unlearn. And that's an interesting thing to say at the university. This is a great quote from Meister Eckhart. God is not found in the soul by adding anything, but by a process of subtraction. We're all about adding. And it's this opportunity to start taking some things away. So in Buddhism, in Christianity, in Sufism, enlightenment, interestingly enough, in Zen is described as intimacy. To be enlightened is to actually experience intimacy within everything, every moment. To experience the intimacy available in this next breath, in this next flower, in this next smile, in this next step. So coming home to our original intimacy. Salvation, interestingly enough, before people were talking about, did you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? Savior? He was a the term that was used is, have you been touched by the great affection? I like that a lot, because I think it's the same thing, but boy, it's a nice way to say it. What was Jesus' term for the nature of God? Abba. Anybody know what Abba means? Father, right. And interestingly enough, it doesn't mean father like dad, I mean, like father, it means daddy, right? It's actually the most tender term you can use to define a parent. It's the most tender parent available. And in a time in history when you could not name God in any way, shape, or form in the Jewish tradition, you just couldn't even say the name God. He not only said the name God, he said, you know what? I'm not only going to say the name God, God is Abba. God is pure tenderness. That's the nature of God. And we could say that his identity was built upon an ongoing experience of this tender parent intimacy, this original tenderness. So we're going to close with a survival kit. I'm aware that not everybody in this room feels like they're about to fall out of the chair in terms of suffering, but I'm also guessing a number of you are suffering a lot. But those of you who are not suffering, I want to give you a survival kit for when the shit hits the fan. Robert Haas, former poet laureate of the United States. In this life, the heart is going to be injured. Period. I had a quote in here that I must have taken out that needs to go before this. It's from David White. He said, "Our great mistake is to live the drama as if we are alone." It's an amazing statement. David White's a poet. Our great mistake is to live the drama as if we are alone. Our great mistake is to live in our suffering as if original tenderness were not enough. That's what I want to say as we close. I don't think the problem is that shit happens. I think the problem is that we don't have access to being here. Anybody I know who suffers because they don't have access to being here. They don't have access to the hope. They don't have access to the original. And hidden in plain sight is the answer to all of our problems, and it comes from Driscoll High School. I'm hoping you want to see this. This is a football game, and thank you. It's a little loud. Can I turn it down? So this is a football game. The quarterback is looking over at his coach. Can you see the quarterback? Looking over at his coach. Am I in your way? Can you see it? Okay. I'm going to show it one more time because it's just too important. So again, he's looking over his coach. They're getting ready for to hike the ball. So I was thinking of stopping right there. There, I'll put it back. So we're in pain. But if we have access to original tenderness, it stays pain. If we don't have access to original tenderness, it turns into suffering. Here's what's hidden in plain sight. Here's Driscoll High School football. I want you to let yourself breathe very slowly at the level you see this yellow line. This is an exhale. And this is an inhale. And that's an exhale. And that's an inhale. So I want you to breathe very slowly. The second thing I want you to do is I want you to take your left hand and place it in your right hand, just the way this little boy is doing it. And place your left thumb toward the middle of your left hand and put your right thumb over your left hand like you were cradling it. Okay. In Buddhism and in Hinduism, we call this a mudra. And there are all these different mudras. And this is a natural mudra that this little boy has come up with. The left hand is being held by the right hand, and the left thumb is being kind of cradled by the right hand. And I want you to just take the next 2 minutes and breathe very slowly. And breathe the tenderness that is actually in this room that you can't see. But you don't have to work to get it, just like that boy didn't have to, push his way through the defensive line. Just let your breathing do the work. It won't be your thinking that makes a difference. It won't be praying out loud in this case that makes a difference. It's the simple practice of letting yourself drop deeper than your thinking, deeper than your happiness or your suffering, and just letting the original tenderness that's always with you do the holding. I've been doing some form of a meditation practice since 1964. Off and on, but it's been very important to me. As I said, I don't think I'd even be alive if I didn't have it. It has really helped me such an incredible time. Because when my brain is on fire and says nothing works and I'm all alone, something deeper is also going on. And that's what I allow myself to trust in over time. I want to close with an image. That's a definition of this image. It's something that a number of you have seen before. This is a documentary taken in the 1980s of Mother Teresa. Who you're about to see is not Mother Teresa. You're about to see a boy who was found on the streets of Beirut during the Civil War in the 1980s. And he's starving, and he has neurological problems, and he's very close to death. And he's brought into this home, this shelter, and this nun meets him for the first time. And I want you to, this is the best and the clearest definition of original tenderness I've ever seen. It is also the clearest description of the unbearable meeting the holy, which means it's a description of prayer. And what you're about to see is the and. You're about to see relationship at its most original and its most tender. You're about to see our hard wiring. You're about to see what we're all waiting for. And clearly what this young boy was waiting for. I have absolutely no answer to human suffering. I don't know why wars happen. I don't know why abuse happens. I don't know why neglect happens. I don't know why it is and how it is that we will end it all, or if we will ever end it all. But what I do know is that the only way suffering is transformed is through tenderness. It's who we are, it's what we're hardwired to experience, and it is my experience that it is available in everyone. May we know this to be so. God bless. So I said, I don't know that I have enough, but I think I do, enough pictures for everybody. This is your survival kit. You may need it now, you may need it in 10 years, but you know, something to remind you. There's also the quote from Richards on centering as a discipline of bringing the most holy and the unbearable together. And there's also a picture of the hands, and on the flip side is a picture of the maze. And if you want to do a neat trick, hold the maze up to the light, and even though your life is still a maze, you can see the hands, which I think is the whole deal. So your job is not to get rid of the maze, it's just to be able to see the hands. So, again, thank you very much. And by the way, if anybody wants to stick around for comments or you want to yell at me, I'm here. But we should let people out.